to do a presentation on my reflections journal, what I learned and how I learned it. Well, first I'm going to talk about how our team made decisions. Our team made decisions rather informally, as most good teams do, I think. We discussed the issue and came to consensus. For instance, when we decided on a team teaching schedule, we each decided to teach every other week, and then we collectively started picking topics for ourselves and just went down the list until all the topics had been picked. Some we knew about, some we didn't. We used a Google Drive document so we could all edit at will. And then we collectively used common sense to decide which topics to group together. I think I suggested we made the policy that if someone wanted to change the order later on or add another day for a topic because we needed it, we could readdress the teaching order, and everybody agreed to that. I don't think we changed the order of our teaching schedule necessarily, but we did modify it somewhat later on as it became apparent that we had already covered the basics, and we found ourselves asking each other what we wanted to learn about within the assigned topic rather than just rehashing old material. Someone initiated this approach and others followed. So in this way we were able to teach and learn what we actually needed to learn rather than just fill a slot. So that's an example of how we made decisions. We collectively sort of came to an agreement, and what worked we kept and what didn't work we didn't keep. So essentially our team used collective cooperation to make decisions. Since we had a rather easy-going yet responsible group, this worked. However, I will add that figuring out the best time to meet as a team was a bit difficult. Not that people were difficult about it, more that almost that they didn't stick up for themselves enough, and we ended up having at least one member that had to rush to class after the meeting, sometimes missing the last bit, and I wish we'd been able to figure out a time that worked better for him. It seemed to work out, but still a little bit of a issue there. Perhaps a more systematic approach to figuring out a meeting time would have worked better in this case. However, we did all agree to a meeting time and weighed the pros and cons to the day and time we chose. But if I could do it better, I think I would have made sure everyone was able to comfortably attend the meeting. Now I'm going to talk about our team solving, how our team solved problems. Our team worked really well together most of the time. When problems arose, such as technical difficulties, we were patient and figured out how to solve them. Sometimes we couldn't solve them. For instance, I remember once a team meeting recording was cut off and there really wasn't much that could be done. But I don't think anybody got upset about it. It's not like it was crucial that we have that recording. We did use them when we needed to refresh our memory on something that someone spoke about, because there was a lot of really good material and there's some really seriously useful tips. But since there wasn't much to be done about it, why get upset is sort of the attitude that everyone had. Other times you could solve the problem. It just required time and patience. I think once someone was teaching and their computer froze, we had to wait for the computer to reboot and continue the lesson. So time and patience, not a big deal. Now, a different sort of problem we frequently ran into was an individual needing help on their project. I think everyone felt comfortable asking for help. We used Hangouts chat to contact each other, and then whoever was available to help responded. Micah was sort of our resident expert, as he's been programming for quite a while, so he was able to help quite a bit. I was able to help occasionally, as we all were. Now I'd like to talk about leader versus follower. Our team chose leaders through natural volunteers. Anne was the initial natural leader. She initiated the team meetings and coordinated the group chat. Dustin stepped in as the technical leader. He set up the team meeting recordings and created the Google Hangouts invites. I suppose you could say Anne started out as our leader and then it morphed more into Dustin. Micah was also the resident coding expert, so he took a bit of a leadership role there. I wouldn't call him a leader necessarily, but we turned to him when we had questions we didn't know how to answer. I came late into the game. I began class a week late, so I did not take on a leadership role. Usually I do, more because I see a need and it's bugging me, so I do something about it, but in this case I didn't. I don't think that's necessarily a problem, though. If I had tried to take over, it would have rocked the boat. So I think it's necessary to allow people to be leaders and allow people to be followers, and if you need to switch roles a little bit here and there depending on what's going on, then a cooperative nature is important. But I don't necessarily think it's better to be the leader or to be the follower, because sometimes, a group needs followers. It needs cooperation. It needs someone who can organize the group. I think that's more of a leader in a group like this is the person who's keeping everyone organized and making sure that the meetings happen and whatnot. But someone who steps in and says, "This is how we're doing it," that's not necessarily what needs to happen. So I appreciate that Anne stepped in and did that for us at the beginning. She recognized the need to have team meetings and initiated it, and usually the natural leader is the person who does take the initiative because they know that something needs to be done. And if there are too many leaders, there can be problems. So if someone else takes the initiative first, it's usually best to just let them. And this way a team can cooperate together. If the original leader needs a break, someone else can step in. So it is better to step into a leadership role or stay a follower? Well, again, that depends. I usually step into a leadership role because I recognize something needs to be done and no one else is doing it. But if, like in this case, someone else is already doing it, then that's great. I have no problem letting them, and to try and steal the show would have been uncooperative and caused all kinds of problems. Now I'm going to talk a little bit about communication and how our team did with that. I feel like our team communicated really well together. However, nothing is perfect. I believe our second meeting, 2 members of our team, myself included, missed that we had moved the team meeting day from Thursday to Wednesday. And we figured it out in time, but not in time to be prepared with our presentation. So our team decided to meet on Friday so the 2 of us who came in prepared could present. It worked out fine. It's sort of an example of when communication breaks down, and just sort of work around it and figure out how to move forward. We didn't seem to have any other major miscommunications after that, at least not that I was aware of. Anne typically emailed the group after a collective decision was made to make sure everyone agreed and was aware. There was plenty of communication on the Google Hangouts chat too. For the most part, I think our group communicated fairly well. There were clearly rough spots, but you just move forward and keep going. There was a definite effort made to be sure that everyone was aware of any changes. Now let's talk about the impending due date. I set up a research schedule for myself early on. However, I didn't exactly stick to it. Instead, I found that if I made a goal to turn in at least one project every 2 weeks containing multiple fluency categories, I stayed on track. The reason my research schedule didn't work for me was because some fluency categories were easier to combine than others, but I didn't realize it until I had conceptualized my project. And so I ended up researching what I needed to in order to complete my project. Essentially, I chose a topic I hadn't done yet, figured out how that project would showcase that particular topic, and then branched out to include other topics. For the most part, I started at the top of the fluency list and worked my way down. Though I did skip around a bit, I gave myself an ambitious due date for each project so I would have a time cushion if I needed it, which I often did, but giving myself a due date meant I stayed on track. I think it was good I planned out a research schedule initially, but clearly some flexibility needed to be there. So if I'd stuck to my research schedule strictly, I don't think I would have been as successful. On the fly, I needed to change what order I researched what so that I could complete projects that went together well. Also, I found I could build on past projects, but that too needed flexibility. So by giving myself due dates, but staying flexible, I was able to be successful and complete all the work that I needed to complete. So let's talk about the highs and lows. So nothing's perfect, but it was pretty close this time. My first high came a few days after my initial fluency submission. I got a 10 out of 10, and I was shocked and pleasantly surprised that I'd done well. My first low was recognizing the frustration of not getting as much done as I'd like. I wanted to zoom through the fluency submissions, but I just couldn't seem to get my projects done by myself. Imposed deadline. I wasn't exactly worried about it because I put in a time cushion, more like frustrated. But then when I tried to stuff 5 fluency submissions into one project to sort of make up for it, I didn't do a thorough enough job, and I didn't reach skilled on a couple of them. So I then made a new project that covered those, and I did reach skilled at that, or expert at that point. I managed to get it all done, so no real serious highs and lows, but I learned a ton, and for that I am grateful. Plus, it was a lot of fun. So thank you for this opportunity to learn more about web programming.